All right, everybody, welcome back to another video. I'm your host, Cobra Trading. Thanks for tuning in today. If you're new to the channel, make sure that you smash the like and subscribe button so that you don't miss out on any of my tutorials. Today, we're going to be focusing on bilateral patterns, and we're going to get into that right after this. If you guys have missed the first two videos in this series, please go back and make sure that you watch those first. They're very important, and I discuss in those two videos not only reversal patterns, but continuation patterns as well. All of these tutorials are going to be building on one another as we get into more advanced topics later on. So it's very important that you watch these videos in order so that you have a good basis of fundamentals as you're building up your skills and your knowledge. With that said, let's go ahead and get right into the charts. All right, I'm down here in the lower left-hand corner of your screen, and you may be looking at this chart and wondering, Scott, I don't get it. Those look like continuation patterns to me, man. What the hell? An ascending triangle is a continuation pattern. Well, here's actually the thing with that. Technically, it is a continuation pattern, but it's also actually a bilateral pattern. And the reason for this is because when you have an ascending triangle or a descending triangle or a symmetrical triangle, what you're actually looking for is a breakout with a lot of volume. If you don't get a lot of volume, you get what's known as a head fake or a bottom fake or a fake out, whatever you want to call it. And it'll be on low volume. And then what'll end up happening is the price actually ends up reversing and either going back into the pattern or the pattern breaks down completely. So that's why we're going to be talking about these today. This is going to be an introduction into getting more involved into volume, which I'll make tutorials on later. So back to the charts. All right, so here's our ascending triangle, here's our descending triangle, here's our symmetrical triangle. Now, for the ascending and the descending triangle, the top or bottom that makes the flat part of the triangle, it must be completely horizontal as close as possible. The price action pretty much has to be settling around that area pretty nicely. You know, like you can't have a whole bunch of, candle closes below it and above it and back below it again. You'll be able to spot these pretty clearly on the chart. They don't happen very often, so I had to actually search for these in the examples, but it's pretty apparent once these are forming. And there's a couple rules with these, okay? With the ascending and the descending triangle, in order to even draw these trend lines, you need two touches, right? So you're gonna need two taps to form a flat horizontal line up here, and then you're going to need two consecutive higher lows for the ascending triangle and two consecutive lower highs for the descending triangle. Now, keep in mind what I mentioned before. These can be extremely powerful patterns. However, they can go both ways. If there is a lot of volume, then they can be significant breakout patterns. If there's a really big loss of volume and these patterns break down, it's the sign of a serious reversal. Okay, so just keep that in mind with these patterns. There isn't really too much else to get into with what the patterns actually look like. I think it's going to be better and faster just to be able to pick out a couple of these and show you some examples that have actually occurred on Bitcoin, both of these following through and an example of them breaking down as well. So let's go and look at an example. How am I going to find an example of this? So here's a good example of a symmetrical triangle that actually ended up just completely breaking down. It's actually a very nice uptrend, and we ended up forming lower highs, higher lows. And this is, you notice down here that I have the volume up, right? We had a lot of volume, lots of bullish volume coming into this pattern, right? The volume kind of died down a little bit. And this was your cue to pretty much sell out of this, right? Instead of getting increased bullish volume, we start seeing an increase right here in the bearish volume, okay? So these white bars, all of a sudden, these start getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and you ended up having a huge reversal here. Now, that is pretty typical of a sign of a reversal of one of these patterns. So it's something to really watch out for. Same goes for the patterns that I went over in previous videos. You really want to be paying attention to volume, and we're kind of getting into an introduction in that today. Here's a good example of an ascending triangle, a proper ascending triangle. We had this big uptrend, right? And then we had level of resistance here, and we had continuously higher lows here You connect all these wicks, right? Okay. So this ended up breaking out right here on volume. So this is the most important thing. So this was actually a continuation, because you can see here that there was a lot of volume coming into this triangle. The volume started dying off. The price started getting really choppy in the triangle here as the volume was really low. And then we got, boom, real big pop of volume here. And that's what ended up happening. It looks like it actually came back down here and retested this support level before it broke down again and then continued on its way. So this is pretty much the best example that I could find of a proper ascending triangle. There's plenty of examples of these where you see it actually coming in from the downside like this. And that's typically what's going to signal it as like a reversal pattern. That's also typical of something like this, you know, like the bear flag that we talked about before. But seeing one that's actually like this, this is actually going to be what you're looking for. Is you want to see it coming in with massive price action, and then you want to see higher lows, you want to see a flat top, and you want to see a breakout on volume. So this is a really good example of that. These do not occur very often. They're actually pretty rare. So you need to really be on the lookout for these, but don't try and force the pattern, okay? Just keep in mind that they are rare. So this isn't the best example. It is one that I was able to find. So if you find a better one, let me know in the comments below. But basically we were coming off this big downtrend, right? And we had this level of resistance here. We had consistently higher lows here. You can see the wicks, they were getting higher and higher. And then this is what's actually known as a head fake. That's the reason why I wanted to do this example is, so we've got these trend lines here, right? And everything's pretty hunky-dory. It's not the cleanest example in the world, but it works. And we ended up breaking out of this with low volume, right? And then the volume here ended up picking up. We got this huge spike in volume and bam, the pattern ended up continuing. But there was a head fake to the top of this pattern. So just be aware that that is something that can happen with these patterns. Once we actually broke down, we actually, it looks like we've actually got another one here that reversed. We had this huge downside, and for the most part, we've got a pretty flat top here. And then we've got an ascending bottom for the most part. Again, like these aren't like super perfect examples. Again, these are like very rare. I would call that pretty freaking valid right there. Honestly, that's as close as you're going to find most of these. Pretty decent example of an ascending triangle. And this actually ended up breaking out. For the most part, it was overall pretty low volume, but the volume that did come in was bullish, and we ended up breaking out here, retesting the bottom, a small retest of minor support here, and then continuing upwards. All right, guys. So I really hope that this tutorial was able to help you out and that I was able to explain some of these things better for you. Later on, like I mentioned, I am going to be doing more tutorials on volume and stop losses, risk management, and start getting more into indicators and other types of trading theory and stuff like that. So like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, if you missed any of these tutorials, make sure that you go back and watch those first. Those are going to be very important for the next steps that we're going to be taking in future tutorials. With that said, I appreciate you guys watching the video. Make sure that you smash the like and subscribe buttons so that you don't miss any of my future tutorials, and stay tuned for my next Bitcoin analysis that I'm going to be doing tomorrow. Have a nice week, guys, and happy trading.